Hello, my friends. If you are a Porter and Dolly fan, you would just love this interview. Porter talks about for the first time meeting Roy Acuff in a coffee shop. He also talks about the feud between him and Dolly, and you'll also hear from Dolly as well. Porter talks quite a bit about his childhood, talks about Mel Tillis, the first time he spoke on stage, and talks about Charlie Pride, his first appearance on a Grand Ole Opry. I hope you enjoy it and let me know what you think of it.
And my guest is a man that I have often referred to as the Thin Man from West Plains, Missouri, Porter Wagoner.
How you doing, Ralph?
Porter, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I've been really looking forward to this for quite a long while.
Porter, who was it they used to call you Old Slick Nickel?
T. Tommy Cottrell called me Slick Nickel. I had a couple of names that I was, I guess, proud of. You know, you called me the Thin Man, which, you know, I did an album one time called The Thin Man. Thank you for that good title. And I don't know where T. Tommy came up with the Slick Nickel trick at, but
he wasn't talking about how tight you were, was he?
No.
You did pay him, didn't
you? Yes, I did.
Now, I really like to talk to Porter Wagoner. I haven't got a lot of voice on this show. I've been fighting a cold, and so bear with me, folks.
And I think probably your voice is, I know you got a little cold, but you work a lot, too. Probably a lot of people don't realize how busy Ralph Emery actually is, but he's a very, very busy man, and I must say probably contributes as much to country music and its success out of Nashville as anyone in the city. And I'm not just saying that on your show. It's just a true fact. And with that,
I liked what you were saying, Porter. Don't stop. Porter, I have been delving into your life prior to doing this show, and I found a wonderful story about Roy Acuff coming to your town. And I wish you would tell it. Back when you were, I don't know how old you were, but you weren't in the business at that time.
No, I was about 12 years old then, Ralph. And Roy Acuff, of course, was just, I really idolized the man. He was one of the first people that I really learned to love in country music, his style of singing, his songs and everything. And we had heard that he was going to be coming to our little town, West Plains, which we lived 18 miles from there. And my dad knew how I loved his music and everything, so he told me that when the show came to town, he would take me to town where I could spend the evening there and go see the show that night. So when we went to town, our little town of West Plains had a square in the middle of town, you know, and people drove around the square. There were stores all around it. And, of course, when we first got to town, I started looking, you know, at all the cars to see if I could pick out one that would be from Tennessee that would be his. And I seen this big, long, stretched-out car over in front of the restaurant there, and had Tennessee license plates on it. I knew immediately, even before I seen the license, I knew it had to be his car, because it's just what I would have pictured he would have traveled in. It was back many years ago. They used to make the car they called the stretch job, you know, where they stretched it in the middle and seated a lot of people.
That was before everybody had a bus.
Yes, that's correct. And so I wanted to go over, and I knew that they were in the restaurant, and I didn't have any money at the time to go in and sit down and eat something, so I just went in and acted like I was looking for the restroom or something to walk in the restaurant, and so I seen Roy, and I never had seen him before in person, but I seen him and his group sitting at a big table back there, and so the guy that run the restaurant asked me what I wanted, you know, and I said, well, I wanted to meet Mr. Acuff over there, but I'd like to wait till he finished eating, you know. And he said, well, you can sit down right here at the counter and wait if you'd like. So I sat down there and waited until they finished eating, and I'd glance over once in a while to see him, you know, and it really stuck out in my mind very, very heavy ever since then. I could tell you exactly what he had on. He had the little string tie with a little sort of checkered string in it, you know, like a shoestring tie.
Mm-hmm.
Had on a pair of black and white wingtip shoes, and was dressed really, he looked sharp, you know. Well, I sit there and waited. Well, when he got up to leave, why, he came by, and I got up and spoke to him and told him who I was, you know, and that I wanted to be a singer someday. Well, what really impressed me so much about this fine man was that he took time out. He stopped there and sat down on a stool there, you know, and talked to me I'd say at least 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And I was so excited that I just didn't know hardly how to talk with him. But he told me, he said, now, son, he said, if you want to be a singer, what you need to do is just keep practicing, keep working at it. Work at it just like you would learning another trade. And if you do that, why, and that's what you want, someday you'll be a singer.
That's wonderful.
And, you know, the story actually, even till this day, when I get tired, like after a show or something, meeting fans and signing autographs, all I have to do is think about that story. Then I know how important it is to take a couple of minutes and visit with someone that likes you and someone that admires you.
That's a wonderful story, Porter. I was talking to Porter Wagner earlier about meeting Roy Acuff. And Porter, I want to take this a step further. According to what I've heard, you used to fantasize that you were on the Grand Ole Opry. And I'm thinking about the time that you used to stand on a stump, and also about the time somebody overheard you doing this. You want to tell me that story?
Well, yeah, Ralph,
this is when you were a kid.
That's right. I was just a kid. My mother told me about this. I had forgotten about it after I got in the business, and she told me about when we had this big tree in our yard that had lightning or something had hit and dead in the tree, so my dad cut it down, and he left a stump there about, I guess maybe 2 or 3 foot high. And it was a huge trunk, this tree was, and I guess he left it there for us to play on and stuff, and I would use that for my stage. And I'd get up on there and introduce my special guest, Roy Acuff, and then I'd sing one of his songs. And
you mean you'd be Roy Acuff?
That's right, yeah. And I'd say, thank you, Porter. I'm glad to be on your show. And I'd like to do one of my numbers now called the Wabash Cannonball from the great Atlantic Ocean. You know, then I'd start singing one of his songs. Well, I did this same thing a lot of times when I would be working, like if I was in the field, plowing corn or whatever. Well, I would fantasize I was at the Grand Ole Opry, and I'd introduce Ernest Tubbs, my special guest, and then I'd say, thank you, Porter, and I'm glad to be with you, you know, and I'd try to talk like him, and then I'd do one of his songs. Well, this neighbor boy that Kenneth Chapin was his name, and him and I went to school together, and I didn't know anybody was in miles of me, and I was plowing corn one day, and the dust was just boiling. I mean, it was hot, and I couldn't see, you know, you couldn't see anywhere from the dust. Well, I was pretending I was the opera and singing and carrying on. All of a sudden, I heard somebody holler at me, and it was Kenneth Chapin. And I was at the end of the row at that time, and he said, who was you talking to back there? He said, I heard you coming down through there. I thought there's 2 or 3 of you. He said, I couldn't see in that dust. So I told him what the story was, that I was just pretending I was the Grand Ole Opry. He said, you're as close to the Opry probably as you'll ever be. You'll be looking these mules in the rear end when you're 65, probably.
Boy, how long have you been on the Grand Ole Opry?
25 years this past year round.
Did you ever remind Roy Acuff that you had met him years ago when you were a little boy, when he came to West Plains, Missouri?
Yes, I did. I talked with him one time about that. And he was really impressed that, you know, that he made that type of impression on me. Roy Acuff is a wonderful man. There's been several parts of my life that he's influenced me in several things. Probably he's the person I got the idea for to have a girl singer on my show, to have a comedian on my show, and to have a completely rounded out variety show, I would say.
He always did all those things.
Yes, he did. And I would say that's where I got the idea for those ads. Another thing he did when I came to the Grand Ole Opry in 1958, why, the first night I was on the Opry, why, of course, I had only had like a couple of records that had been pretty big records, but, I mean, there was nothing I could do for this man. And he walked up to me backstage, and he said, I'm really glad you're on the Grand Ole Opry. said, "I think you're a fine young man," and handed me a piece of paper, and he said, "This has my home phone number on it. If I can help you in any way while you're here, please call me."
That's nice.
It was a great feeling, although I never had to use it. It was me in a strange town, you know, and I was nervous about living here and being away from home. It really helped me tremendously.
Porter, I want to talk about Dolly Parton, if you don't mind.
All right, I don't mind at all, Ralph.
What I want to do, Dolly was on this show a couple of years ago, and the subject of Porter Wagoner came up. At that time, there were some records out by the two of you. There had not been any records in quite a while, but there were two in 1981, or late 1980 and 81. And I'm going to play for you what she had to say, and then I want your comments.
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, let's listen to what Miss Dolly Parton had to say on the subject of Porter Wagoner. Dolly, there is a record out, and it's in the country charts these days by you and Porter Wagoner. It follows one that was out earlier called Making Plans. Why are we hearing records by Porter and Dolly again after a hiatus of some 2 or 3 years?
Well, the songs that's in that album and If You Go, I'll Follow You and Making Plans, these were songs that we did years and years ago that we had, as they say, in the can, and that means songs that you've recorded at different times during your career that didn't make it into an album, or you just had too many songs and they were just kept being put aside. But when we were in the lawsuit together, when we were settling that with our business things...
Did you and Porter Wagoner sue each other? No,
he sued me, and it turned out it was just kind of an embarrassing thing that I wish had never happened, but in a way it was kind of good that it did. But I mean, that's hindsight. But anyhow, when we were settling the lawsuit, then that was part of the agreement that he could take those songs that we had in the can and redo them, put new music to them and release them as an album. And I thought the album was very good. I was real proud of that album, and it's doing really good. I don't know that there'll be any duets in the future. It's certainly not an impossible thing. I don't feel that we're enemies.
Are you saying you would record with Porter in the future?
It's certainly not impossible. I would if we could come to some sort of an agreement on how we would do it, and where we both had control of what we were doing.
Creative control.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to just go in and do it again with just Porter and get back in the same situations
I
that
assume
we had.
when you made records with him, he had all of the creative control then.
Well,
he was the boss.
Well, he was the boss, but he didn't have all the creativity, but he had control. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But we had some wonderful times. I'll always respect Porter. We went through some bad times. We spent 7 of the best and the worst years that I've ever had in my life, and there's a lot to be said about Porter, both ways. But I'm sure there's a lot to be said about me. So it was pretty equal. I think that we did a lot of good for each other. I'll always be grateful for the good things that I was always grateful for.
Porter gave you a big break, didn't he?
Yes, he did, and I appreciate it.
Porter, those are the words of Dolly Parton. She was on this show 2 years ago, and I'm wondering if you have any comment on what she had to say.
Well, I feel about the same way that Dolly, what she said she felt about the things. I think it's true that I did give Dolly a big break, and I think I contributed a lot to Dolly's career, and she contributed a lot to my career as well. The duets we did, I think, were great for both of us. And the part that Dolly was talking about me being boss, well, if I was recording with Loretta Lynn, naturally I would not be boss. If I was recording with Dolly Parton today, naturally I would not be boss. But at that particular time, I signed the checks. So, therefore, I was boss.
She worked for you.
That's correct. So I don't want people to get the wrong idea that I'm a bossy type person, that you can't deal with me unless you let me boss you. Because I've recorded with other people that, I never bossed around, because I only boss the people that I sign their checks. But when I do sign your check and you work for me, I'm going to tell you what I want. That's one of the good old American ways that we have.
All right, Porter, would you be receptive to the idea of making records with Dolly Parton again?
Ralph, I know of nobody in the music business anywhere in the world I would rather sing with than Dolly Parton. And I can say this not being, I hope you don't take it the wrong way as though I'm just bragging on Dolly and I, but I honestly don't think there has been a better duet probably than Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner, because I thought we had a great blend, and I would love to sing with Dolly.
You think that will ever happen?
I feel like it will. I don't have anything against Dolly personally at all. And I hope the fans realize that, and I don't feel like Dolly has anything against me. She certainly has no cause to. Neither do I have cause to feel bad about her, because we did do some great things in the music business together. And I would like to think that someday we'll get that opportunity again. And if that happens, why, we will be on equal terms going in, and Dolly will have as much say as I do about the things. I would want her to, because I wouldn't want to record with anybody unless there was an employee of mine where I had all the say. I would like to do it on equal terms, to where you have equal agreement on material, equal agreement on the sound, in every respect. But I love Dolly, and I would like to do it sometime.
Porter, Jerry Reed wrote a little song one time, and you were the first to record the song, so I assume he wrote it for you.
Well, actually, Ralph, I went to play a little place called East Point, Georgia, which is inside Atlanta. And this was years ago, and this little kid he wasn't a little kid, but this boy came up to me and he said, "Hey, I got a song I'd like for you to hear." He said that I wrote. I really think it'd make you a dandy record. And I said, "Well, when we get a chance, director, I'll listen to it." So anyway, we were getting ready for the show, and I got a few minutes directing. I seen him standing in the wing there. I said, "Well, come back to the dressing room. I'll listen to that song." So went back, and it was Jerry Reed, and he sung "Misery Loves Company."
Hey, are you telling me this was before Jerry came to Nashville?
Oh, yes, yeah. He wasn't even in the business then. He was just, I think, just writing, and he was appearing on the Georgia Jubilee, they called it, in East Point, Georgia.
Kind of like your meeting with Roy Acuff, wasn't it?
I guess it was, yes. And he sang the song for me, and I said, "Listen, that is a great song." I said, "If you'll get that on tape for me, I'll take it home with me and I'll record it for you." He said, "I'll find a tape machine this afternoon." So he started looking, and he made a tape of it, and I brought it back and recorded it the following week.
Porter, I want to go back to Dolly Parton for a moment. And I want to ask you this question that every country music fan, not everyone, but most of them used to ask me. Is Porter... They worded it in many ways. The question was, is Porter running around with Dolly, or is he having an affair with Dolly Parton?
Well...
Would you care to speak to that?
There's so many answers to that, Ralph. You know, really, there's probably about as many answers as there are people asking questions about that. And, of course, I get asked lots of questions about Dolly, and I'm delighted because I spent 7.5 years with Dolly, working with her on the road, and I have a book that will be out sometime, probably in the next year, and it will have the whole in-depth story of Porter and Dolly, along with all of my people that I've known, the women in my life, the men in my life, the guys in my band, the whole life story. So I like to save a few little things, and this will bring up more questions, won't it? But let me tell you a question I got asked one night. You know, I have a question and answer part in my road show now.
Mm-hmm.
And I stop in the middle of the show. Excuse me. In the middle of my show, I stop and let the folks in the audience ask me questions, and I give them the answers. And I usually tell them, you know, they can ask any question they want to. I know everything, so just ask me whatever you like. But anyway, this one lady, I always get asked about Dolly. And this one lady asked me one night if I knew what size bra Dolly wore. And I told her I didn't know the size, which I don't, but I did know the brand name. And the brand name was Rawhide. Round 'em up, move 'em out. Rawhide.
Did she like your answer?
Well, the audience, they thought it was funny, so... but I like to keep that part of the show happy and lighthearted and so forth.
Do they ever ask you a question that you back away from?
Well, no, not usually. I've not gotten asked. I can't remember of any. You know, once in a while somebody will stand up and say, "How old are you?" And I say, "Sit down, shut up. Next question." So, but I just have a fun thing with it, and really, it's a nice part of my show because I have found people like to get to know you better, and I'm sure that's why they probably
Well, you
enjoy
see,
it.
that's the that's the purpose of this show.
I would say that people enjoy that, you know, because I think one of the things. Let me just mention about Ralph Emery. A lot of people say, well, Ralph Emery is one of the toughest people on earth. Hell, he'll ask you anything, man. I mean, he'll put you on the spot, run you out there. Well, see, one of the nice things is, Ralph, I think about your show, you ask the questions like the fans would want to hear, and that's why people like you. Sometimes maybe the artist is not too happy about it, but you ask what fans want to hear, and that's what it's all about.
Porter, as I recall, one time you did an album with Dolly Parton, the title of which was Porter Wayne Wagoner and Dolly Rebecca Parton.
That's right. We did a duet album then. Had a picture of me when I was 9 years old, and I think one of Dolly when she was either 9 or 11, when we were just kids.
Do you ever go back to West Plains, Missouri?
Yes, I was back there last year, Ralph, and played the Howell County Fair, and had a great time. I love to go back. It's kind of difficult. Probably the hardest place to entertain is at your hometown. You know so many
You have
people.
a lot of relatives back there?
I do, yes. My sister still lives there. My Lorraine and Lola, my two sisters. And a lot of friends, you know, people that I maybe went to school with and haven't seen for years, but I enjoy it very much.
How long is Porter Wagoner Boulevard?
It's about, let's see, it's about 6 miles long, I guess. It goes all the way through town. It's the main street through West Plains. And there's another street that crosses it, that runs about the same distance, I guess, but runs kind of parallel with it, then toward the end of town crosses it, called Jan Howard Boulevard. And I've got several clippings from the newspaper from when they'd have an accident or something at the corner of Porter Wagoner and Jan Howard Boulevards.
I can see it now. Jan Howard crosses Porter Wagoner.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing to happen. When did they name that street for you?
Ralph, that was back in the early 70s, I believe maybe 71 that happened.
So it's been over 10 years.
Yes. And it was a great honor. And very proud. My mother was still alive at that time, and it was a great thrill for her to see her son Boulevard named after him. And I spent the day there. They had what they call the Porter Wagoner Day, and it was really a great event.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have two sisters that live in West Plains and Springfield. Lola still lives in West Plains. My other sister lives in Springfield, Missouri. And I had two brothers. One of my brothers had a heart ailment, died when he was 18 years old. And then my other brother was killed in an automobile accident about 20 years ago.
I see. Porter, we were talking about your mama. What was your mama's name?
Bertha May Bridges was her original name. Bertha May Wagoner.
Didn't she order you a guitar when you were your first guitar when you were quite young?
Yes. I think I was about 9 years old, Ralph, when Mama ordered the guitar, and I paid for it by trapping rabbits. And I'd give her the money. I'd sell the rabbits to the mailman that came by. And I had about, I guess 30 or 35 rabbit gums at that time, rabbit traps. I'd run them every morning before I'd go to school during the fall and winter months and sell the rabbits. And
what could you get for one rabbit pelt?
Well, at that time, it got usually a dime. Once in a while, they would get down to 8 cents, and sometimes they got up as much as 15 cents each.
What'd the guitar cost?
Ralph, I don't remember. It seems to me like I saved about $18 or $19. But Mama bought the guitar for me. See, she just saved all the money that I accumulated.
So at the age of 9, were you already dreaming of being an entertainer?
No, actually, I don't think I was. I wanted a guitar because my brother learned how to play from the neighbors that had one. And I wanted to learn how to play because my brother played fiddle, too. And I knew if I could get a guitar at the house, he would learn me how to play. And him and I could play music together. So I might have had it in the back of my mind then, but anyway, it was interesting for me to save the money, you know, and give it to my mama.
Where is that guitar today?
It's at my house.
You
I
still
still
have it?
have it. Yes, I do. It's an old National that she ordered out of, I believe, Montgomery Ward or Sears Roebuck, one of those, the catalog things.
I'm sure it's very valuable to you, at least.
Well, it is. It still has the places where I played the G, D, and C chord. I only knew about 3 chords. But all the paint is worn off in those 3 areas of the neck. And I saved enough money during that year. Mama ordered me the guitar and bought me a new pair of shoes that had the steel toe in them, you know, where you couldn't mash your toe.
That way you could kick the rabbits, couldn't you?
Right.
Porter, you mentioned something a moment ago that I didn't know. I knew Mel Tillis was on your television show for a while, but I didn't realize that you got Mel to talk on stage.
Yes, I did, Ralph. Mel.
I assume at one time he didn't say anything.
That's correct. He worked about probably 3 months for me before I ever got him to say anything on stage. He would sing one song right after the other. Then when he had sung his repertoire, why, he'd take a bow, and that was it. And we were, I believe, somewhere in Virginia, I believe it was. And I had talked to Mel about it a lot, and he said, well, I'm just afraid people would make light of it. You know, they would either feel sorry for me or they would make fun of me because of me stuttering. I said, listen, they would love you if you would just be honest with them. Just say what comes out, you know, and they will understand. And I said it will be entertaining to them. And he said, well, I'm going to try it tonight. Well, I couldn't hardly get him off the stage. The people loved him.
You mean once he started?
No, he was trying to hurry, you know, and it made it even more funny because the people just, they loved him. And I think I mentioned it to the audience that night. It was the first time that he had talked in front of people. Well, that just made it even more exciting for everyone. But that was the first time, I think, that he ever did any emceeing at all of his own show.
Porter, do you remember when Charlie Pride came to RCA? You were over there, and a lot of people thought this was a radical move.
Yes, they did, and Mel Tillis and I were running around together then. We spent a lot of time together working on songs and things, and in fact, Mel wanted to pitch some songs to Charlie. We heard he was coming to town. The first I'd actually heard of him was Red Sylvain. Came back from out northwest, and he told me, he said, I heard this black guy sing that is one of the finest singers I've ever heard. Well, naturally, it was hard for me to picture a black guy singing country music and real country songs. And so then when I heard he was coming to Nashville, why, I was real anxious to meet him and to hear him sing. Well, once I heard him sing, why, he sold me the fact that he was a country boy and he loved country music and was a singing dude.
Did you think he might be singing like a rhythm and blues singer?
Well, yeah, I felt like that his phrasing would be like rhythm and blues. And I love rhythm and blues music, too, and soul singing, and I love every kind of music there is. But I just couldn't hardly picture him saying words like country people would, you know, like, oh, the snakes crawl at night, that's what they say. Well, see, Mel wrote that song for him and pitched it to him while he was here on his first trip.
Porter, how many awards did you and Dolly win as the duo of the year?
I think 3 or 4 different years, Ralph, we were nominated, and I believe we won it twice, I think. I'm not positive, though, about that. That's I believe we might have been nominated 4 times, and I think won 2 awards.
Porter, when you selected Dolly Parton to sing in your show, she replaced a young lady named Norma Jean. I assume that you considered many girls to replace Norma Jean once you found out she was leaving.
Yes, I did, Ralph, and they were several girls that I talked with and auditioned for me. Some of them, and I won't mention names, but there was about 3 different girls that were actually well known at that time, that had record careers going and wanted the job because of the exposure on television.
Why'd you pick Dolly?
Well, for several different reasons. One, she was in complete contrast to Norma Jean. She was a complete different look, a complete different sound, and I just felt like Dolly was more of a unique stylist than any of the other girls that I had auditioned. And for all of those reasons, Dolly had not had any experience at that time on stage, and I knew it would take her a while to learn how to present herself right on stage and to learn how to talk to the audience. Because when she first came in my show, she talked like a machine gun. You couldn't hardly understand her.
I think she told me about one of the worst moments of her life was when she first went into your show in Louisiana. She was booed.
Yes, she was. And I really felt so sorry for Dolly. She came off the stage crying, and that was where the idea for the duets came about at that time. Because I knew at that time that I needed to do something to help get Dolly established a little with the audience, with the crowd that had come there thinking they were going to see Norma Jean. And I told Dolly, I said, what we'll do tonight on the way to the next engagement, let's learn a couple of duets. Because she had helped write a song that her and Bill Phillips had out called
Put It Off Until Tomorrow.
Right. I said, let's learn that song and one other one that you and I can sing together. So when I introduce you on stage, when you come on, why, you and I'll do a couple of duets first. That will kind of ease the tension a little bit off of you. It will get you established on stage, and I'll stay out there with you. And if they start to boo, let me talk to them. And let me tell them, say, look, let's give this girl a chance. Norma Jean is not here and won't be here no more. So we learned The Last Thing on My Mind. It's a duet. So the next night when I introduced her, why, her and I opened with The Last Thing on My Mind, then we sang Put It Off Until Tomorrow, and it was a complete different thing.
The Green, Green Grass of Home, when that hit, it seemed to me like everybody went out and recorded the song. In the first 2 years it was out. But going back, I think you were the first person to record this. Am I correct?
Well,
or was it Johnny Darrell?
It was Johnny Darrell. And I'll tell you a little story, a kind of a quick story that's kind of interesting. I was over at RCA, and Johnny was recording this song, and the song just knocked me out. And I talked with the boy that wrote it, Curly Putman. I said, I would love to record that song. And he said, well, why don't you cut it, because Johnny is not known, and it's very doubtful that the song will hit with him. It's a possible hit, but you don't know, you know. I said, well, okay, let me take a copy of it, and I'll work it up on the trip. I was going to Arkansas. So I took a copy of the song, worked it up, and I came back in town the next day. Then the following day, I went in the studio and recorded it. And Johnny Darrell was a good friend of mine, and I talked with him about it, you know, and he said, well, gosh, I'm delighted you cut the song. He said, I think my chances now are slimmer than they was of having a hit, but he said it could help my record. So anyway, he was kind of disturbed the fact that I was going to come out with it because of me being an established artist. And he told Curly Putman, he said, look, he said, Porter's recorded the song. I know it's going to be a hit by him. He said, they like his music so well, they're still playing Uncle Pen, which he cut 20 years ago. So anyway, the song, I put it out, and it was a #1 country record. Then Tom Jones recorded it, and gosh, I don't know who else.
That is a song, I've got to be honest, it's a song I got sick of. Because it seemed to me, Porter, that every time I turned around, somebody was singing Green, Green Grass of Home.
Well, I guess it's true they were. You know what, Ralph, during certain periods of the business, it seemed like it was much harder to find a great, great song to cut. And everybody would cut it when one would come out.
Another one was me and Bobby McGee.
Yeah, that's right.
Still wear the rhinestones?
Oh, yes, I do. And
let me ask you a question that may sound like a sick question, but I mean it in all sincerity. Would you, when the day you die, do you want to be buried in one of your rhinestone western suits?
I would love to be. You know what, Ralph? If I had to face my maker, I'd want to wear the best thing I had, the most expensive and the best looking outfit my money could buy. I know of nothing that would look better or be finer than a beautiful rhinestone suit.
What do you pay for those things?
Right now they cost about $5,400
A
for
piece?
coat and pants. That's correct.
What do the pants cost?
That's that's not the accessories. That's not the belt, boots, and the shirt. That's just the coat and pants. The first ones that I bought cost around $1,500 back in 1953.
So they've gone up that much.
Yes, they run from $5,200 to $5,600 now.
What does it say on the inside of your coat when you open your coat to show the audience?
Hi. H-I.
Why? What prompted that?
Well, people started asking me and say, why do you pull your coat open on the stage, you know? Well, I started doing that just as it was just an accident, I guess. I would pull it open so they could see my belt. I was wearing a belt. See the buckle on this belt here?
Yeah.
That's a very expensive belt buckle.
Looks like it's full of rubies.
It is full of rubies, and it's silver. And like you wear, say, a $1,500 belt, nobody ever sees it. So I want to pull my coat open. And if I ever start wearing underwear that looks that pretty, I don't know what I'll do on stage.
I want you to tell me about your dog.
Well, that's
Name of your dog?
I have two, Brandy and Lady.
Yeah, you brought them here by the station here recently. I saw them. I was thinking about your other dog.
Oh, Okie. Yeah.
No.
Okie, the black dog?
No.
Oh, you mean the Sex? Yeah.
You had a dog named Sex?
Yeah.
And
More fun. Hello? Yeah.
fact is, you told that story on a Nashville television station and got some calls, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Fact is, you were always out looking for sex. You lost your dog. Is that one of your stage routines?
Well, yeah, I just got it fixed up for that, you know, where I could do it on stage because people are always asking me about my dogs. Ralph, I want to take just a second and say thank you. All of the industry and country music, I think, owe a great deal to you. And thank you for having me on your show. And you do so much for our industry, and I thank you kindly for having me on. And I can speak for everybody. We're very proud of you.
I thank you.